what we're going to see, particularly because of this East-West divide and the move into the Chinese yuan, the ending of the petrodollar, the birth of the petro yuan, and all these indicators, is you are going to see the purchasing power of the dollar fall significantly. Gold will just go along like that. But what it means is that measured in gold, you find that the dollar goes down to something like, I don't know, I mean, it could go to 1/2,500th of an ounce, could go to 1/3,000th of an ounce. I don't know.
Just for reference, Alasdair, where are we at right now in reference?
Where we are right now is 1/1850th of an ounce.
Okay, just clarify. I mean? Just clarify.
I'm turning it upside down. I'm turning the conventional way you look at it the upside down for one very good reason, and that is the volatility is in the fiat currencies. It's not in gold. And in fact, if you look, the fascinating thing is you can go back, 2,000 years. I mean, if you go back to 231, 235, round about then, you had Diocletian was trying to stabilize prices, having corrupted the denarius even more than before. And if you look at his list of maximum prices, I mean, quite a lot of them exactly the same as they are today. I mean, there's been some volatility, obviously, in some of them because, for example, today we can't price slaves. There isn't a slave market, thank goodness. But you can see that, with the sort of mainstream things like beer and clothes and things like that, there is a commonality of price the whole way through. And fiat currencies have come and gone, come and gone, come and gone. This lot so far has come, and I think it's on its way out. So it's an interesting... historical perspective is actually very important to grasp.
Interesting. Yeah, you touched on a couple more points I wanted to bring up was again, China, sort of really stepping it up here, but also it feels like everybody's too focused on the US. You're bringing a bit of a different perspective here with the petro yuan and talking about more what's happening on the oil side, because that's really driving the US dollar. And it's not really the Fed per se. It feels like even reading the Fed minutes yesterday or the FOMC meeting minutes, everything's like, oh, the US is so important. It doesn't talk about outside factors, really. Like, just skimming through it yesterday, there's no outside factors mentioned, right? Let's pretend here and maybe get out the crystal ball. Like, the US, I believe, is not going to give up world currency status without a fight. Yeah? How do you see them... or what kind of scenario in your mind or in your theories, what would they have to draw up to sort of protect that status? Like, how would they bring Saudi Arabia back at the table? Doesn't seem like Biden had an impact traveling there, as you mentioned. How would they bring the Saudis back or turn them back?
Well, to be fair to President Biden, it wasn't Biden. No. It wasn't his fault at all in the sense that a different president could have achieved a different outcome. The Saudis had made up their mind. You've also got to bear in mind that the Saudis, I had this quite some time ago, back in 2014, I interviewed a director of one of the leading Swiss refiners, and he told me then that they were taking in LBMA 400-ounce bars, some of which were pretty dusty and, obviously at the back of the vault type stuff, from Arabia, from the Middle East, recasting them into the Chinese 4/9s 1 kilo standard, and then sending them back to the Middle East. So what I would conclude from that is that even in 2014, which after all is 9 years ago now, the forward thinkers in the Middle East realized that their future was increasingly in Asia and not Europe. And we've now turned round and told the Saudis, in effect, and also the Qataris and all the Gulf Cooperation Council members, we've enjoyed burning your fossil fuels, but we're going to put a stop to it. We're no longer going to give you any orders after a certain date. It depends where you are, but it could be, say, 2030. As soon as that, 2035. So what do they think? Where's their future market? Well, it ain't in Europe and it ain't in America, because we're all gung-ho doing without oil and all the rest of it. So what we will do is we will go to the fossil fuel burners. That's where our market is. And this is why President Xi got a 27-year gas contract with the Qataris, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. This is why he's got this deal with Saudi Arabia, where, in return for oil, which will be bought and paid for in yuan, China will step up its investment into Saudi Arabia so that the balance, just goes down to a minimal amount. And subsequent to the official communique in a speech in Saudi Arabia, President Xi said, and of course Saudi Arabia has agreed to use our financial markets to offset risks, dealing in oil yuan contracts, yuan gold contracts, and so on. So what we're going to see, I think, is we're going to see Saudi Arabia, and remember, they very much understand what real money is, and it's not someone else's credit. They're going to be in there putting some of that, I think, into gold. And the other point I would make is that I don't think that petro yuan would have had a chance of flying if the Saudi Arabias were concerned about the purchasing power of the yuan relative to the dollar. Now, that's a very, very important point. So what they're telling us by their action is that here is a currency which is at least as good as the dollar in terms of retaining its purchasing power.